Downey, go ahead.
Yeah, before we take a deep dive into this, really interesting position here. Very quick question, Vishy. You mentioned the topic of nerves, and obviously it's very cliche kind of thing to discuss, but there aren't a lot of people who can offer insight into what it's like to be leading the candidates tournament. Do you feel like most players are united in the fact that you just feel incredibly nervous when you're ahead with a couple of rounds? Do you already start sort of envisioning yourself playing Magnus on the grand stage, or is every player different in their makeup and how they manage and negotiate the anxiety of being in the lead?
You still have to do the job. The closer you get to it, the less you want to do that job. You want it to be over. And that's the challenge, really, because at this stage, it's not noticeable yet. But I remember that when I when I drew with Levon, and then in the ninth round, I beat Topalov, and Levon lost to Mamedyarov. And then I was essentially with a +3 cushion because I had a 1-point lead and I had beaten him in our individual match. So, and this stage I was fixated on Levon. But then Karyakin started coming up. And then I realized Karyakin would be, this match would be crucial because if Karyakin beat me, then he would take a favorable result and he still had to win his last game, and I would have to not win mine. I knew that somehow this was the decisive game. I knew that if I lost the 13th game against Karyakin, I would be in no state to play against Swidler. At least that's how I felt. My nerves would have been shot and I would have felt absolutely awful. It's hard to explain why you have such negative feeling, but I had a half-point lead and I would have white in the last game against Swidler. Karyakin would be half-point behind and he would be facing Levon in black, and I would still have been terrified. With same thing in the World Championship in Mexico. I had a huge lead and all that. If I had lost to Grishchuk, who was not in the running against me, then I would have taken only a half-point lead over Gelfand. I would have had white against Leko. Gelfand had, I think, black in that last round. And once again, with a half-point lead, with the white pieces, everything, I would have felt awful. The point is where you're coming from. Jan is coming off such a big lead that if it gets narrower, it's unbelievable pressure on him. The nicer way for it to get narrower is that he holds +3 and one of these guys goes to +2. Then he won't feel bad. But if he loses to someone else and these guys catch up half a point, he's going to feel very silly because he'll blame himself much more. There's a bit of grasping at straws here. So far, I see no sign that Jan's destiny is not exclusively in his own hands, but it's there. Depending on how you get to the last round, you can be in quite bad shape.
That makes a lot of sense, Vishy. And I was very surprised to hear you say you were terrified, because I think many people watching would say, Vishy terrified. He's invoking fear into his opponents. But I guess, you have to juggle with the chess over the board with all of these results possible. And the nerves do play a big part, it sounds like.
Yeah, and when you're that close, and think of it for me, I was coming off more or less a year of bad results. And then in a tournament, I had almost no hope. Going into the tournament, I just wanted to have a slightly good tournament and kind of limp back to some state. And then suddenly I'm qualified again to play against Magnus and I get a second shot. And after essentially having the tournament in my hands for that long, you can recover from setbacks earlier in the tournament, but that late it's very hard. At least for me, it would have been very hard because you're kicking yourself the whole time. And I always felt that was the most unpleasant situation I could be in. So in Mexico, then I saved something which is very close to a lost rook ending against Grishchuk. And then I took a full point lead into the final round. And then I knew I had to make a draw only. And the signal was almost that Leko would, I would see what opening he would play. If he would play the Sicilian, then I know that he's going to try and unbalance it. But he played the Marshall, and the Marshall has too many forced draws. So then I knew, okay, he's basically telling me, if you want it, go ahead and take it. So that kind of signaling that happened. But it's not impossible. I've seen Magnus ruin his tournament in the penultimate round and then come back and win the last round. And I have myself done it sometimes. But in general, after what will be like 3 or 4 days of Jan feeling that he's got this, it's his to lose. It's very difficult to suddenly make the adjustment to fighting again. Now he knows he's coasting and he's fine, but to suddenly switch to not being able to coast anymore. It's like you go to the airport for a flight in which you think you have plenty of time and you can be very relaxed, and then suddenly you're forced to run because, I don't know, your taxi was late or something. And it's that change in your state of mind which puts you off. I mean, I'm overdoing the dramatics, but I think the worst thing that could happen to Jan is that he stumbles somewhere, still takes a half-point lead, then he's going to suffer. Otherwise, if these guys come to +2, there's some pressure on him. But he's got white against his two principal opponents, and it's essentially his.